Okay, guys, good morning. Thanks for joining today. I think more than 80 people registered for this training. I see like almost 30 people right now. I think let's get started. So just introduction, my name is Ravi and I am basically located in US. I see a lot of folks from different parts of the world. Uh, I am basically certified in Google. I'm a professional architect certified. I have multiple certification in AWS, and I'm also an author. So right now, the role that I am right now in Kyndryl, I am just completely focusing on AWS. So what are we planning today? We are planning the AWS certification oriented training. That means the areas that I am covering today is basically related to AWS certification. You have two certifications available, solution architects and professional. In my opinion, you can prepare for professional and then you can take for, you can take the solution architects exam. It will be easy for you to pass. So what are we talking about today? What is the method of training? So what I'm doing right now is, can you guys here look at this screen? Can you see the screen? Can you see me? Yes, thank you. So the way I'm doing right now is, we need to do, we need to study or we need to prepare this material by doing it. There is a wrong way of training for certification exam and there is a right way of training the certification exam. The right way of doing the certification exam is by doing the work. So what I'm going to cover is I'm going to talk about a couple of architecture in AWS based on the well architect framework. How do we design a VPC? How do we configure a security group, NACL, all those stuff I'll be covering based on these architecture diagrams. And then I'll be looking at the console, the spin, the VPCs, and a couple of other services, so that we can know how we are implementing that architecture in AWS. And then what we will do is we'll look at the AWS CLI. This is something like you can download it to your computer, and whatever you are doing by console, you can do it through the command line options by using Cloud Formation. Of course, you can use other automation scripts also, but right now I am focusing on the Cloud Formation scripts. So the way we are doing is we look at the architecture diagrams, we look at the console and the Cloud Formation script, and then we will basically have a discussions. So please ask questions, write your comments or questions in the chat window. I will try to look at that chat and I will try to answer as much as I can. I put a couple of links here. One of the common questions is, how do I get exam vouchers, right? So I put a link here and you can contact this email address and they can answer any questions related to countries. So the other areas that I will cover is the well architects framework that AWS is offering. That is a Bible, right? Any questions that you have, you need to refer that first before referring any other external material. They are very good at updating those materials. So AWS Well Architect framework is our Bible. That's our, anything that we are designing, we need to look at it. Anything we are provisioning, we need to take a look at it. And I mentioned about learn by doing at the beginning of the conversation. So please make sure that you do the labs if you don't have a real world experience. So if you look at, there are a couple of links I provided. One is the Well Architect Labs. So this Well Architect Labs, it's available, it's free of cost. You can just go to this link and, they have a lot of labs available. How do we create a VPC? How do you create a, RDS clusters. All these information is available in the Well Architect framework. So please do the labs. Please don't read the materials alone, right? Or watch the videos. That won't help you much. And then other other labs that you have is the Quick Lab. It's available for all the Kyndryl resources. Please make sure that you register with your Kyndryl email ID. So once you register that, you can basically, get access to these Quick Labs. And there are plenty of labs available with a lot of use cases. And they have architect certification focused training as well, right? So I would make sure that before writing the exam, you just go through and complete these labs. That will help you a lot. So let me pause here for a second. Any questions? Anything? Any questions you have before I go through the materials?
Yeah. Ravi, is this PPT will be shared, Ravi?
Yes, I'll send it to whoever is registered for this training. I will send it to all of you with this PPT, and also I'll send you a couple of resources, right? The Cloud Formation scripts, the architecture diagram that I'm showing today, all these resources, and also some of the external resources that I downloaded that may be useful for you to pass the exams. I'll put everything in a box folder, and I'll share the box folder with you all.
Okay, thanks, Ravi.
Sure. Okay, so let's look at what we are talking about, right? Okay, somebody is asking, do you have a voucher for Quick Labs? You don't need a voucher for Quick Labs, right? So if you look at this lab, you are right. When you're trying to provision, it will ask you for a voucher, right? Actually, you don't need a voucher. There are some of the free labs available that you can use it, but you know what? The best thing for that is you have instructions here. You just go through the instructions, open a free account in your AWS console, and make sure you delete or remove all the services after completing the labs, right? So you don't need to spend money on the lab money here, right? The instructions are very clear. You don't need AWS to help you in provisioning those things. So I will not purchase a voucher for Quick Labs or ask any voucher for anyone. You can just do it by yourself. Please make sure that you clean up, right? And some of the things you need to be very careful about when you are doing the labs is, for example, Elastic IP, right? If you are provisioning an Elastic IP as part of the labs, just by deleting the VPC alone may not be sufficient. Of course, you cannot delete the VPC without deleting the Elastic Cloud, Elastic IP. But you need to be very careful about if you're using Elastic IP and attach that with the NAT gateway, then you need to delete the NAT gateway first before removing the Elastic IP. And also, if you delete your VPC, anything that you're provisioning is gone. But you need to be careful about S3 or ECS or any of the other services that is outside of your VPCs. So be careful about the billing, right? The good news is, in case if there are some charges, you can always call AWS customer services and they will always waive the charges for you. That's my experience, but it may vary. So don't quote me on that. All right, so somebody is asking whether the recording, yes, I'm recording this training and I'll put this recording session also in a box link. So you can get this training from the box link. So let's look at, coming back to this. Okay, so let's look at what we are talking about today. So the way I organize this training is basically, before I go through this line, let me do a poll real quick. I just wanted to know, what is your knowledge level in AWS, right? I mean, I just put like beginner, medium, and expert. I would really appreciate if you could answer that, so that I can frame my talking based on the knowledge level you all have, right? There is no point in talking about basis if most of you are experts. Okay, the poll is coming. Okay, all right. Yes, let me close the poll right now. 13 more people to answer it. Just give a couple of seconds for them to answer. So what we will cover basically is the way I structured is, a typical on-prem web application. You have web app and database. How do you provision that in on-prem? The same thing, how do you provision in AWS, right? So before I go there, let me close the poll. Okay, poll results, apply. Okay, got the results. Okay, it's great. I think 32% said medium, 41% said beginner, 2% said expert. Okay, all right. Thank you for answering it. So whoever is marked as expert, so please jump in. I would appreciate if you could provide some insights on that. I'm not claiming myself, know everything on this. So any insight from your guys also will be appreciated. So coming back to this, so what I will do here is, let me go to the architecture diagram here. So in a typical web application, right, you know that you need web, and the web can be, the web server can be IaaS, or it can be Apache, or it can be Nginx, any of this web server. You need a web server if you want to provision a website, especially for the static pages. And then you need an app server, right? App server is basically, the WebLogic or Tomcat or like WebSphere, right? Any of those app server models. And then you need a database, right? We all know. So this is a typical 3-tier application, right? So we know how we do that in the on-prem. So the question is, how do we do that in the AWS, right? So in the AWS, we know that web has to be in the public subnet, because this is something like, is going to external facing, right? So basically, you need to make sure that the web server is basically public facing. So that has to be in the public subnet, and then the private subnet, basically you put all the app servers, right? Because this is basically not an internal face. It's not only internet facing, it's only the it's only the internal facing. You don't want to expose your app server to the world, right? Same thing for database, right? So let me look at a couple of diagrams that I wrote. So you put a public subnet in the web, you put a private subnet in the app, you wanted to put a database in the private subnet, right? So how do we encapsulate the subnet within AWS? You provision a VPC. I hope you all know what is a VPC, right? That's something like your own data center, right? You get a data center in AWS, and anything that you're provisioning, you will be associating with that VPC. Even if you don't create a VPC, you will get a default VPC created by AWS for you. Please don't delete that, right? Never delete your default VPC. Keep it up and running. Just let you know, there is no cost for a VPC, so don't worry about it unless you provision an elastic IP. There is no cost for security gateway or any of these services associated with the VPC, except few services like transit gateway and some of this stuff. So it's free of cost. So the first thing you need to do is basically, close this, go back here. Okay, so before I go here, before I provision these VPs, I just want to let you know that I assume you all know the exam guide, right? AWS, you have the AWS Architect. Just Google the link for AWS Architect certification. It will give you the syllabus. Please make sure that you read this syllabus, right? For example, like for professional architect exam, certain things are out of syllabus, right? For example, like machine learning, Amazon Game Lift or 12 factor. Please don't spend time on these subjects, which is not part of the exam. Please make sure that you focus your labs and study based on the exams. Let me close this. Okay, So let me go back to this, right? I mean, all we need to do is you need to create the first thing we need to do is we need to create a VPC. I assume everyone went through these steps. So I'm not going to, explain details about, how to do that, but let me, since a lot of people are said like they're beginners, so let me cover these things real quick. So the first thing you need to do is you need to go to VPC and do a launch a VPC, and you can provision only VPCs or you can provision VPCs with subnet, right? So in the architecture diagram, we said like we need one public subnet and we need one EC2 for web, and we need one private subnet, one EC2 instance for app, and one private subnet for database, right? So in the VPCs, let me pause here a second. Any questions that you have? Let me see in the chat. Okay, good. So please feel free to ask questions or anything that you, any clarification that you need, either you can ask or you can put it in the chat. So in the VPCs, all I need to do is I need to create two subnets. So let me look at how many subnet you have. So here by default, AWS provide me two subnet. Why did they provide two subnet? Because I put availability zone as 2. So what is an availability zone? So when we provision, the resources within AWS, you need to see like, where exactly you are provisioning it, which data center you are provisioning it. So availability zone is nothing but a data center, right? So you're selecting a data center that you have. You have multiple availability zone because one data center can go down. So your web application may need to be deployed in multiple availability zones. So you provision the resources in another availability zone as well, and then load balance across it, right? And then your VPC cover both of this, right? One VPC can have multiple availability zone, right? So this one, same thing, you can have multiple, right? You can make it more complex. You can have multiple VPCs and we can have multiple availability zones and then regions, right? So each of the, if you really want a high load balancing application, then you deploy your, application across region. So one question I have is, can the VPC span across region? Do you guys know? Anybody want to answer in the chat? Do you guys know if VPCs can span across region, right? We know in VPC, we can create multiple availability zone, right? And we know that multiple availability zones cannot span across VPCs. It can be only within one VPCs. Okay, great. So span across zone, not region. Yeah, thank you, Eric. Thanks for answering that. Yes, the VPCs cannot span across region. That's the difference between Google and AWS, right? Google VPCs can span across regions. A lot of things are much easier because of that architecture. Unfortunately, AWS doesn't do that, right? VPCs are limited within region, and then you have to connect these two VPCs by using VPC peering or transit gateway or some other mechanism. So that create the application architecture a little complex, right? To be frank with you, I found a lot of stuff in AWS is lacking compared to with Google, right? For example, AWS doesn't provide a two-way replication for database. It doesn't have an API for billing, right? They preach that you always use Cloud Formation, but I cannot utilize Cloud Formation because their billing doesn't have an API, right? So there are a lot of things are lacking, right? Anyway, so let me remove this. So coming back to this, right? Okay, somebody is asking the question about there is a new version of the solution architects coming. Yeah, thanks for bringing up Jonathan. Yes, there is a new version of the solution architects syllabus is coming up. They published the syllabus. It is effective from August, right? There are a couple of machine learning and a couple of other new additions are there. So if you're planning to take certifications, take it before August, right? So that you don't need to learn those machine learning stuff and AI stuff, right? And a couple of other stuff. Or you can wait till August or later and learn those stuffs and then take the certification. So in order to make it simplified, right? I'm provisioning this in only one availability zone and one public subnet, and I'm putting two private subnet here, right? Because one for app and one for database. And now there is another area about NAT gateway. So what exactly is a NAT gateway? Why are they asking NAT gateway? So coming back to this diagram. So NAT gateway enable you to connect your private subnet to internet. We know that from private subnet, you cannot go to internet, right? So how do we connect private subnet, EC2 instance to internet? We need to connect to internet, right? We need a browser session. We need to download patches. We need to download software. So how do we connect that? So that's why they have an NAT gateway. NAT gateway has two purposes. One purpose is it enable connectivity to internet for the private subnet. The second one is it provide an NAT translation so that anybody from the internet looking at the traffic, they don't know your private subnet IP address, right? So that's the purpose of NAT gateway. So look at here. So NAT gateway. So you need. I'm not provision. Yeah, let me provision one AC for NAT gateway. Then what else we have? We have the CIDR block. What exactly is a CIDR block? So when you provision something in VPC, first thing you need to tell AWS is how many IP addresses you need, right? As per the best practices, always choose the lower number, right? Because the higher number has less IPs. So one thing from my experience, guys, by designing this AWS architecture with couple of years, certain things in AWS you can always change. You don't need to worry about at the beginning, right? You can always change a lot of things, but certain things you cannot change. Couple of things you cannot change is VPC design. Once you decide how many VPCs you need, and once you decide that architecture, you cannot change that. If you want to change it, you discard everything and start from fresh. So the number of VPCs you need and number of AWS accounts you need, that also factors. As per the best practices, you need one VPC per environment, right? One for development, one for QA, one for production, and one for sharing VPCs, right? Those are the minimum number you need. The AWS accounts, it depends, right? If you have a small footprint and a small client, one AWS accounts may be enough, but as per the best practice, you need at least one for production, one for development, right? And then you need to configure an AWS organization for different organizations team. So one question I see from Prashant is, how can we decide this CIDR range for the subnet? On which factors we will decide the range? So as I said, Prashant, the best practice is go for the lower range, right? But if you know for sure that, hey, I'm going to provision only a couple of subnet, I am not going for expansion, then you can select a higher version. The way you are calculating, let me go here real quick. So the way you are calculating this is basically you can see this, right? CIDR VPC has minimum 28 and maximum size is 16. So you can estimate how many IP addresses on each CIDR block, right? So the way you calculate, this is an exam question, by the way, right? Otherwise, I won't be bothered to put it here. So this they will ask you like how many IP address. It's a silly question, but please make sure that you know this calculation. So there is a subtract number of network bits from 32. So 32 minus 29. This is 2 to the power, right? So that means 2 to the 3. That means 8 addresses. So you can see, like, if you are putting 29, you get only 8 IP addresses. We know for sure that that's may not be enough for you guys, right? So Prashant, it's always depends on the client, but I always prefer to be safe side, put /16. Why bother, right? There is no downside for selecting higher subnet. All right, thank you. So before, I think I covered a couple of slides. I came back. So before I go further, so I said like we will be covering a monolithic application today, right? That means we'll be covering how to build a 3-tier application, web app and database. And then we will talk about, VPC design, VPC, provisioning, and then EC2 provisioning. We will talk about storage. We'll talk about monitoring, all this stuff for a typical 3-tier application. How do we do it in the AWS? That's what we will cover it today. I don't think we'll have enough time to cover rest of this stuff. So the next section, we will cover, how do we design a microservices application, right? Especially how do we build the containers, right? By using ECS, EKS, Fargate. So it's all about, right now, every client wanted to go in containerizing their application or Dockerizing their application, right? Earlier it was SOA, right? I wrote a book in SOA earlier. Now nobody is talking about SOA, right? Everybody want to talk about containers, right? So I will cover the containers in the next session the same way. We'll look at the architecture and we'll look at the provisioning in the console. We'll look at the cloud formation script. How do we do a microservices application within AWS? The last session which I thought of planning is basically a cloud native application. A lot of clients, wanted to move away from the monolithic application. Nobody want right now, right? Even though that's the best architecture, in my opinion, in majority of the cases. People want a containerized application, or they need a cloud native application. That means they wanted to utilize all the AWS cloud native features, like Lambda, right? Or like, a lot of new services that is available, and they wanted to build an application based on that. So in the third session, we will cover the cloud native application architecture and a cloud formation script. And also we will do the console provisioning. Okay, so coming back to this VPCs, where are we? So we talked about CIDR block and the project. You just put a project. So I'm putting like Ravi AWS. You can put any name here. So what are we provisioning here? Here we are provisioning one VPC and 3 subnet. Why is it 3 subnet? Yes, 1 public subnet and 2 private subnet. So next thing I see is route table. What is a route table? Right? What exactly the route table? Why do we need route table? Route table will enable us to route the traffic from your subnet and from your VPC. We will cover in details. Right? We'll talk about it. And then network connections. What are the network connections here? They're talking about internet gateway. They're talking about, why NAT, and they're talking about the virtual private cloud or virtual private gateway. We'll talk about it. What is it? All these things, right? So let me click there you go. Maximum VPCs has been reached. Okay, it looks like I have a lot of VPCs here. Let me look at how many VPCs I have. Oh boy, I think I started provisioning a lot of VPCs here. So let me delete a couple of VPCs here. All I need to do is delete VPC. I hope there is no elastic IP address associated with that. So this is how you delete a VPC, right? You just provision it and then you delete it, you're good. I'm deleting it, it is gone. So whatever you're provisioning it, it's gone for a second, right? So I'm coming back here, go to VPC dashboard. I'm selecting it. I'm launching a VPC again, VPC plus subnet. I'm putting Ravi AWS default. I have 1 AC and 1 public subnet and 2 private subnet. And NAT Gateway 1 subnet. And let's see, create VPCs. Hopefully it will go through. Yes, it's going through right? Okay. So I think I have a question from Jonathan. Yes, one topic I always fail to show on courses, IPv6. Yes. So they have a, Jonathan, which really comes in exam. Yes, I think there are some few questions about IPv6. So IPv6, usually we don't need to put a CIDR range for IPv6. AWS will allot for us, right? I have a couple of things about IPv6 I'll cover, and we'll talk about IPv6 in that time, right? Just let you guys know, IPv6 is needed because we are running out of IP addresses on IPv4, right? They had billions of IP addresses in IPv4. Now they are getting out of it. That's why they are provisioning IPv6. A lot of clients are switched their architecture to IPv6, but still a lot of people are still following the IPv4, and we'll talk about IPv6 in the coming slide. So let's look at, so this VPC has been provisioned. So what are the things it's got provisions? Created a VPC, created an S3 endpoint, created a subnet, we know that. We provision an internet gateway and route table, elastic IP. Man, I don't want to create an elastic IP address because this will charge me, right? I think it's got provision because I provision a NAT gateway as part of this. I'll make sure that I'll delete it or send you a bill, right, who are attending this meeting. Okay, all right. So coming back to these slides, let me go back to these slides. So these are the topics that I'm covering today, right? Which is a syllabus from the application, which is syllabus from the exams, especially focusing on the VPCs. Okay, all right. So VPC design, right? So one first question comes in picture is how many VPCs we need when you are architecting something. I told earlier, each environment need a VPC. Simple as that. And we may need multiple accounts. We covered that. Then the next question you need to answer is, do we need a multi-region or we need a single region? If it is a single region, how many availability zones you need? So whenever somebody is asking you to create a landing zone in AWS, the first question you need to ask is, what is your non-functional requirements? Availability, failover, what are the requirements you have? And then, you need to decide your CIDR block. We talked about it. And we need, we talked about, we need an environment, we need VPCs to each of the environment, and then use automation, right? Please make sure that you use automation. Let me go there real quick. All you need to do is, so AWS, if you download the CLI, you can just download it by yourself, and it's available. And then let me just go there. So all you need to do is, put AWS Cloud Formation, and you can get all the help here in order to understand all the commands which is available as part of AWS Cloud Formation. And then all you need to do is, let me go back here, right? Let me go back and select Cloud Formation. So always, like whenever I am doing anything in AWS, I always look at the Cloud Formation. It's very easy to provision and it's very easy to delete it. Cleanup is much easier compared to going through the consoles, right? You see a couple of people from outside. I hope everybody is Kindle, right? Let them in. Okay, so look at this. All we need to do is go to Cloud Formation stack, and then basically you need to create a stack, right? You need to create a stack with a new resource. Okay, with a new resource, and in the stack you need to upload a template file. So you need to script your VPCs ahead of the time, right? So let me look at some sample script I created. I look at April with the Atom. So let me open that script. It's basically either YAML or it's basically either JSON, right? It's your preference. I prefer YAML because the syntax is much easier. The only annoying factor is the white space, right? But you configure your session appropriately, then it's very easy to do that. So let's take a look at it, right? How exactly the AWS VPC YAML is created? This is VPC. This is Internet Gateway. and you attach the gateway to this, and this is your public subnet, and this is your private subnet, and this is your route table, and you attach your route table to subnet. That's it. And all you need to do is upload the template. We select VPC1.yaml. I upload the template here. And in here, you can see this in the design, right? You don't need to, look at, it will give you a pictorial representation. That's another things I like about AWS Cloud Formation, right? You know exactly how it looks like, right? Before getting provisioned, right? So if you look at this, I think Adam is asking, which is better, Cloud Formation or Terraform? So Adam, in my opinion, if you are doing only AWS Cloud, don't complicate your life with Ansible or Terraform. Just utilize Cloud Formation, right? But if the client, your client has a preference for Terraform because they have a multi-cloud strategy, they wanted to move their application from AWS to Google in the near future, they want to script everything in Terraform, yes. In that case, you can utilize, Terraform. Otherwise, just stick with the Cloud Formation. That's my personal opinion. Yeah, I think Jonathan replied to that. Thanks, Jonathan. Yes, that's the exact same thing. If it is multi-cloud, use, Cloud for Terraform. I utilize Terraform, and they claim that, you create a script once and run it anywhere. That's not the case, right? If I create a Terraform template for AWS, it doesn't run on GCP. I tried this. You have to make a lot of changes on that before running in GCP. So I don't personally prefer that. Okay, let me look at the design view. Where is this? Okay, couldn't view the design view. Where is it? I couldn't move this. JSON, you can select JSON or, okay, unfortunately, I cannot see the design view for some reason. So come back here, right? All you need to do is you come here and then you provision this. Then let me close this. Next, and it will ask me a stack name. I'm putting Ravi stack, AWS, and then next. And you don't need to put any of this stuff, but always use tags, right? I mean, tags is very important. The reason why you need to tag everything that you need to do is for billing purpose. You can track your billing. You can, make sure that you can create multiple reports about how many services, which account, which environment, all these reports that you can create by utilizing Cloud Formation if you are using tags. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult, right? Okay. So I think it's getting provisioned. Yes, create stack. Okay, I think I see a question from Saurabh. Saurabh, is it Cloud Formation is region specific services? If a service is region specific, then yes, right? But if a service is multi-region, you have a way of your Cloud Formation script to connect to multiple region and then spin that that particular stuff to that particular region. So the first thing you need to do basically in the Cloud Formation is, you once you configure that, all you need to do is AWS configure, right? And in AWS configure, it will ask you your access key, secret key, and which region you wanted to run this. So here in the Cloud Formation script, you specify the region that you wanted to run. Instead of US East 1, you're putting, say, US West 1, right? So that your Cloud Formation will run it over there. Yeah, thank you. All right, so coming back to this, okay, there you go. It's create in progress. That means it is creating this particular stuff in using Cloud Formation. So the reason I showed you this is basically always go and look at the Cloud Formation. There are a couple of questions related to Cloud Formation in the exam. They won't ask you syntax, right? Syntax, they won't ask you. but they will ask you, they provide you a screenshot of this particular stuff and then ask you, what is the purpose of this? Similar kind of question. In associate, it's very preliminary, but in the professional, they ask you little more details, right? The difference between professional and associate exams, in the professional exams, of course, they cover some of the additional stuffs like operation, costing. But apart from that, in my experience, in the professional, they give you multiple choices, right? You have to select 2 or 3 answers. If one of your answer is wrong, you get 0, right? That is number 1. And number 2, they ask you to select a best answer. That means if they give you 5 choices, you can utilize all the 5 choices. There is nothing wrong in it in sometimes, but they ask you select the best, which is the best choice. And what I see in the professional certifications questions, the questions are getting shorter. When I took the first time professional, I ran out of the time in real quick because I couldn't even read all the questions, right? Because it's so lengthy. Now they shorten that questions. That's a good thing. And every word is important in the professional. For example, they will ask you, create a cost-effective solution. You need to make sure that the cost is the factor. Sometimes they will ask you, select the best answer to make sure that the client get high availability. Then the cost is not a factor, right? You have to look at the select an answer which is based on the high availability. And the professional exams, I won't read the questions. I read the answers first, right? The first thing I read is answers first. Make sure that you understand the answers. Sometimes when you read the answers, you can eliminate some of the answers. You can say like, it doesn't make sense, right? Somebody is asking you, hey, put a web server in private subnet. I'm simplifying it. Of course, we know that should not be the case, right? You can eliminate the answers. And also, when you read the answers, some of the answer sentences are same, right? If it is same for all the 5 choices, don't even bother about it, right? So read answers first and then start reading from bottom to top, right? Because the most information, the questions that they are asking is on the bottom part, right? Don't read from the top, because in the top they will say that a Fortune 500 company wanted to go to AWS from on-prem. It is irrelevant, right? In my opinion. All right. So let's look at the coming back to this, our AWS console. Yep, Jonathan is saying that this kind of info I'm looking. Of course, Jonathan, thank you so much. And I really appreciate you guys joining today. And also let me know how we can improve this training, right? I have scheduled this for every Thursday at 10 a.m. You can just join with the same link, and I will make sure that I put that in the training link also for the future sessions. And let me know how we can improve it. I wanted to make sure that the time that you are spending here is well worth it, right? Because you are spending your time on here. Okay, so let's look at the AWS VPC. Yes, it's provisioned that. So let's go back to the slides real quick. We talked about VPC design. We talked about CIDR block. CIDR block, I don't need to repeat it. NAT gateway, we talked about it. Why do we need NAT gateway? NAT gateway is needed because private subnet wanted to go to internet. They have to use NAT gateway. So you need to be careful. You don't confuse between NAT gateway and internet gateway, right? There are a lot of gateways are here. Internet gateway, the virtual private gateway, direct connect gateway, transit gateway. When you look at the answers, you just scratch your head, which gateway it's supposed to be applicable here, right? So that's coming back to my earlier point. Don't read documentations, because when you read the documentations, you're just, by hearting it. That won't help you in the exam. You do, learn by doing it. You create an internet gateway and you create an NAT gateway, then you will not forget. So let's look at the NAT gateway that we have here, right? So if you look at VPC, coming back to VPC, in the console, it's coming up. Okay, there is a question from Bushan. Is there any other scenario we can try in the portal so that they may be helpful while exam? I don't understand. Are you asking like whether you can refer internet or portals while taking exam? If that's what you meant, Bhushan, no, you cannot open any windows, and you can take exams either on-prem centers, or you can do it in house. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hi Ravi, Bhushan here. Yeah, thanks for the question. Actually, what I meant to ask is like, as you mentioned that there will be questions and scenarios and answers to them, and we start reading the answers first. So that type of scenarios, like, test cases basically, where we can try those, like creating a VPC, creating the scenario of the requirement which a client could ask us, so that we can try it by hand from the AWS portal itself, so that while we go to the exam and try to answer that question, it sounds familiar. Otherwise, sometimes it happens is like there will be too many terminologies asked in a single question, and to correlate them, it becomes like a time spending task during the exam time. So that way I was asking.
Absolutely, Pushan. I totally agree with you, right? So all you need to do is that I think I mentioned earlier. Um, you need to go to the Quick Labs. Make sure you get access to this, right?
Okay.
And I will not go and write the exams without going through these labs, right?
Okay.
Here, if you come here and say select VPCs, right? I click this VPCs. You know how many labs it's coming here? It says that computer networking, how to create VPCs by Cloud Formation, how to do logging, troubleshoot, VPC peering, transit gateway. This is what I meant earlier by saying that learn by doing it, and this is free, by the way, right? You just go to the labs and execute few labs. Make sure that whatever the labs that you're trying is relevant for exam. I will not do the
Right.
labs for game shift, for example, or machine learning or AI, right? That's not relevant for exams. But
Correct. Yeah.
majority of these labs are relevant for exams. And it's same thing for applicable for Google also. I passed the Google professional certification without even reading much documentations. All I did is I came to Quick Labs, did the labs. That's all I did, right? Because when you do the labs, then you can understand it and you get a full picture.
Correct. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, this sounds very much helpful. Yeah. Thank you very much, Ravi.
So coming back to this, our NAT gateway. So all you need to do is when you say create NAT gateway, this is where you need to create an NAT gateway. So NAT gateway will be attached with a public subnet, right? You don't want to attach your NAT gateway with private subnet, because you don't want this private subnet to be exposed to the internet. You want this private subnet to connect to a NAT gateway in public subnet, and then go to internet gateway and connect to internet. So just understand the terminologies here, right? NAT gateway is attached to a public subnet, helps private subnet to connect to internet. And internet gateway is something like, I may have a diagram here. Yeah. So internet gateway is something like, it allows public subnet to go to internet. Any VPCs that you're creating, it comes by default, an internet gateway. All you need to do is you just need to attach this internet gateway to public subnet. So make sure you understand the difference between internet gateway and the NAT gateway. So here is what you need to select a subnet. So don't select a private subnet, select a public subnet. So the exams, they will ask you questions like, one of the answers is attach an NAT gateway with a private subnet and download the patches. You know that that's wrong, right? And then elastic IP. Be careful with this stuff, guys, because it will rob you. Because any elastic IP that you are creating, they will charge you. AWS will charge you. So make sure you delete all the elastic IPs that you're, creating as part of your training. So, and NAT Gateway, it doesn't support, security group. Okay, what is a security group? Let's cover that. So security group, okay, let me go back to this. So when you create a typical web application in a scenario, right, in a on-prem, you create firewall between your public subnet and private subnet. And database, you connect through a JDBC that is also being, connected through, firewall. So security gateway will allow you to create firewall for your instances. Remember this, security gateway will allow you to create firewall for your instances. That means EC2 instances. And then another firewall that you have is network NACL, network access control list. So if you look at here, security, there is two firewall option. One is security group that you attach with your EC2 instance. Another one is network ACL that you attach with your subnet, right? So these are the two firewall options that you have. You don't need a network engineer for this. You can do it by yourself, right? So, okay, they kick me out of here. Let me log in back. But before I go, let me quick chime check. It's almost, 10:52. I don't think I will be able to, cover rest of the stuff today. So what I will do is I will cover in the next session, and I just wanted to, spend time here for at least asking, one question for you guys. Let me see. Okay. Appreciate if you can answer this, right? Just make sure, like, you understood what we are talking about here. So how many IP address for a CIDR block for 192.168.0-26? I put a calculation here. We talked about earlier. Can anyone answer this, so that you can I make sure that you understood the calculation, right? Because this is one of the sure question. 62, 64. Okay. Thank you, Prashant. Thank you, Srikant. Thank you, Krishna. Appreciate you guys are answering it. So remember this calculation says that subtract the number of network bits from 32. And then there is a second portion of it. Subtract 2 for the network and broadcast IP addresses, right? For AWS, it's 2. For Azure, it is 4, right? Each cloud providers, it's different, right? So the correct answer is, as somebody said, like, Aravind, couple of people said, yes, it's correct answer is 62, right? This is a sure question for exam, guys. Okay, so what is a route entry in the private subnet to route the traffic to the internet via NAT gateway? I know that we didn't cover this, right? We didn't cover this route table entry, but let's see, like, anybody should be able to answer this. So the question here is, when says, like, you wanted to go from, private subnet to internet through NAT gateway, we know that, right? So we need to create a route table associated with each subnet. What is a route table? Route table will tell us how to route the traffic. If it is local, then basically all the traffic will be within the VPCs. If it is something else, then the traffic will be outside of the VPC. So I think Jonathan answered here, right? So basically you put the route table entry as 0.0.0-0 and put an NAT gateway, and that will take you to the outside. So I know that we didn't cover that. We'll cover in the next session. Next session, what we'll do is we'll create a route table entry. This is very important to get an understanding about route table, security group, network access control list, internet gateway, all these things are sure questions for the exam, right? So make sure that you understand, what is the route table entry we need to do in order to go from private subnet to the internet, right? What should be the route table entry for public subnet? What is the security group you need to put for your EC2 in order to enable that communication between web server EC2 and database EC2? All these things are very important, and we'll cover in the next session, Thursday. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for reply. So, okay, another question is, what's the difference between internet gateway and NAT gateway? Somebody want to talk or type? That's fine. What we are talking about here is, this is internet gateway and this is NAT gateway. What's the difference, right? Why do we need internet gateway and NAT gateway here in an architecture, in a VPC? Yeah, you can unmute yourself. Please feel free to do that.
First thing is thank you. This has been a great session. And regarding the question, the NAT gateway only performs translation, so it only serves to do that with the internal IPs to the external IP. The internet gateway acts as a router that connects the internet and has the routes to the internet to external IPs that belong to your public subnet.
Perfect. Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate that. Yes. So he mentioned about it. Internet gateway will allow you to connect to internet. NAT gateway allow you to connect, from private subnet to internet. And Jonathan provide a couple of additional points to that. Thank you. So the other question, what's the difference between NACL and security gateway, right? Let me stop there, guys. I think we didn't cover that. We didn't talk about security gateway, and we didn't talk about network access control. What's the difference? Thank you, Adam. It's a stateless versus stateful. Absolutely, right? NACL you attach with the subnet, security group you attach with the your instance. Again, I wanted to make sure that we learn by doing it, right, rather than talking about it, because talking, we'll forget it. It won't register in our brain, at least in my brain. I mean, you guys may be more intelligent than me, but I cannot understand just by reading it, right? I have to do it by doing it. So we will, in the next session, we will cover NACL, we will cover security group, and then we will cover more details about VPCs, how to connect different VPCs, what are the methods of connecting different VPCs. And also we will talk about, EC2 instances, how to provision an EC2 instance, what are the storage associated with that EC2 instance, what are the options available, and how do we create, connect from an EC2 instance from a web server to a database. How do we connect EC2 instance to outside to download the patches? All those things we'll cover next section. So please join the same link, same time, and please make sure that you register in the training session, so that you can, so that I know who is attending this training. I can pass all the training material to you guys. Okay. And in between, before next week, if you guys have any questions, anything, I'll be available. I put my Slack at the beginning. So please make sure that, I will be available in case if you have any questions or anything, right? Hey, thank you for joining the training. I really appreciate, all these people joining and taking time to attend this training. Really appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Good.
Ravi, I have a question.
Yep.
Every week we have to register, or the first register will make a continuous register?
Yeah, that's a good point. Let me create a reoccurring registry entry, right? At least next time,
Yes.
please register it, and I'll make sure that I create a couple of sessions with that, so you don't need to register every time. Right?
Yes.
Any other questions? Couple of minutes.
Ravi, can you please share the registration link here?
Share what?
The registration link.
Oh, the registration link. Let me see whether I have it or not. Let me see. Let me stop the recording right now.
How many sessions are we planning? How many 1-hour sessions are we planning?
It depends on you guys. I have time right now. So let's see how it goes, right? If there are enough interest and if you guys want me to take a couple of additional sections or couple of additional topics, we can definitely cover.